I have to take this call. It's important, Eliza whispered, her voice low and urgent. Though the words were in Dutch, the unique rhythm and sharp intonations of the language made it unmistakably foreign to anyone nearby. It was a call from the Netherlands, and the language cut sharply through the marble silence of the hotel lobby. The words slipped from Eliza Carter's lips like a breath lost in wind. Yet in the gleaming marble lobby of the Aurora Grand Hotel, they landed like thunder. In a faded blue janitor's uniform, her grip tightened on the worn handle of her mop. The third buzz of her phone pulsed in her chest pocket. University of Leiden. Calls were forbidden on duty, more so for cleaning staff. But this wasn't just a call. It was the sixth chance after 6 silent rejections from a master's program in international linguistics. Eliza stepped behind a marble pillar, pressed the phone to her ear. Hello, dit is Eliza Carter. Mary Carter, this is Professor Van Houten from Leiden. I'd like to speak with you about your motivation letter. As they spoke fluently in Dutch, no one seemed to notice until silence fell, as if the air had thickened. A deliberate cough, measured footsteps. Eliza turned and froze. 3 steps away stood Alexander Grant, the billionaire behind the Aurora chain, his eyes fixed on her, unreadable. At his side, Manager Wilson bristled with barely restrained fury. Carter, my office. Now, ona forn Tiran. Eliza ended the call, her fingers trembling. Grant's gaze held a flicker of curiosity. Wilson's eyes, nothing but contempt. The descent to HR in the basement felt more like a sentence than a walk. Every passing glance from coworkers bit like cold wind. She was the only black woman on the cleaning staff, and the only one with a linguistics honors degree, something Wilson never once acknowledged. No phones? No excuses, Wilson snapped. You're on night shift now, convention center restrooms. And be grateful I'm not firing you. Eliza's jaw tightened. Her hand closed around the cloth in her pocket, not to clean, but to keep from speaking. As she left, a European guest near the entrance paused. He looked at her and said with a faint smile, Uwetspraak was perfect. Eliza nodded slightly, forcing a tight smile. What she didn't know, what no one knew, was that this quiet moment of humiliation would soon crack open everything. The basement smelled of bleach and silence. Eliza changed uniforms in the dim locker room tucked behind the laundry chute. The stiff navy jumpsuit she wore for night shift work didn't carry the Aurora Grand crest, just a blank patch where a name might have been. 2 floors above, guests toasted champagne under chandeliers. Down here, the mop water was cold. The tile floors unforgiving. Convention center restrooms. Night shift. No bonus. No complaints allowed. She pushed the cleaning cart through double doors into the first ballroom corridor. Her footsteps echoed under fluorescent lights as her thoughts churned in disbelief. Wilson hadn't even flinched while delivering the punishment, just a blank tone. As if Eliza wasn't a person, just a problem to be reassigned. Wilson hadn't even looked up from her desk. Effective immediately, she'd said, signing a paper with a flourish. You're assigned to night sanitation. And just so we're clear, any further violations, and I'll personally initiate termination. Eliza had opened her mouth, then closed it again. Her voice wouldn't have mattered. The first hour passed in silence. She scrubbed floors, refilled paper towels, cleared trash bins. And when her knees ached and her back screamed, she moved to the next stall without pause. She passed 2 co-workers from housekeeping in the hallway. They averted their eyes. Once she'd helped cover their shifts. Once they'd joked in the lunchroom. Now she was invisible. By 2:14 a.m., the halls were quiet enough to hear the hum of vending machines. Eliza slumped briefly on the bench outside the women's lounge. She reached into her locker bag and pulled out a folded sheet of paper, creased, nearly translucent with age. Her resume: honors degree in linguistics, Georgetown University, fluent in Dutch, French, Mandarin, and Swahili. She'd sent this exact copy to Aurora's internal recruitment team 48 times. 48. Every attempt ignored, sometimes with auto-responses, sometimes with silence. Once, she'd been told her name was too difficult to pronounce for an international liaison role. 6 years. 6 years of waiting tables, cleaning suites, wiping up after people who couldn't be bothered to look her in the eye. She reached deeper into her bag, pulled out a small leather case and unzipped it slowly. Inside was a nameplate one she used to keep on her college desk, Eliza M. Carter, Linguistics Honors. Her fingers lingered on it. A reminder, not of failure, but of what had once been seen. She stared at it a long time. Not in sadness, but in the kind of silence that precedes something tectonic. A voice once told her, The moment you stop believing you belong is the moment they win. The sound of a door slamming in the adjacent hallway snapped her upright. She stuffed the nameplate back into her bag and resumed her work. Her body moved mechanically, but something in her mind had shifted. The humiliation had settled, the sting replaced by something colder, sharper. She wasn't done, not by a long shot. At 3:06 a.m., a high-pitched voice rang out from one of the VIP lounges near the ballroom. "Excuse me, is someone going to clean this mess or not?" Eliza emerged from the restroom carrying a bucket, only to find a spilled drink on the marble tile and a sharply dressed guest frowning at her as though she were part of the stain. "This is unacceptable," the woman snapped, not bothering to lower her voice. "These floors are supposed to shine." Without a word, Eliza knelt and began to mop, her eyes on the movement of the cloth, not the glare above her. The woman continued muttering, then walked off, heels clicking. The floor gleamed again. Eliza's reflection stared back at her, quiet and still. From this low angle, the chandeliers above looked unreal, like lights from another world. A world she used to believe she might belong to. The next morning, the call came just as Eliza was finishing her third hour of mopping the upper atrium floor. The receptionist approached, hesitant. "Mr. Grant would like to see you. Executive level." Those words alone were enough to silence the service corridor. Even the maintenance staff paused, watching her like she was being summoned to a different world. Eliza wiped her hands on her uniform, heart pounding. The elevator ride to the 33rd floor felt longer than any shift she'd ever worked. When the doors opened, the air felt different, colder, quieter, more expensive. Her shoes didn't belong on this carpet. Alexander Grant was already standing when she entered the office, bigger than her apartment, with glass walls that looked out over the city. "Mrs. Carter," he said, motioning to the chair. "Please." Sit. Eliza sat, her posture straight but cautious. "I asked HR to pull your file," Grant said, opening a thin folder on the table. "After I heard you speaking Dutch yesterday." She blinked. "Sir, you speak Dutch, Mandarin, French, and Swahili. You hold an honors degree in linguistics. Georgetown Moyer, Man. He flipped a page. "Sopra Frenemanamon Sosorwaitin. You've been here 6 years." "Yes, sir. And in that time, you've submitted 48 internal applications for advancement." Eliza nodded once. He closed the file. "That's more than anyone else in this hotel. I checked." She didn't respond. "I have a quick test," Grant said, standing and walking toward a bookcase. He pulled a slim volume from a high shelf, then read a passage aloud in French. "Translate, please." Eliza did, smoothly. He turned the page and began again, this time in Mandarin. She didn't flinch. Her intonation was perfect. Grant watched her for a moment longer, then sat back down. "I needed to know it was real," he said simply. "I assure you, sir, I didn't lie on my resume." He gave a small smile. "I never thought you did." A pause. "We have a major international trade conference starting tomorrow. Delegates from Beijing, Amsterdam, and Paris. I want you on it. Not cleaning. Coordinating." Eliza stared at him. "Sir, you'll report to me directly. Temporary, for now. We'll see how it goes. But from what I've seen, I'd rather have one Eliza Carter than 10 underprepared specialists." She was too stunned to respond. Grant didn't wait. He handed her a temporary access badge and a printed schedule. "Orientation starts this afternoon. We'll get you a new uniform. One with your name this time." She took the badge with both hands. Her fingertips were still damp from bleach. By the second afternoon of pre-conference preparations, Eliza was seated at a glass table in the executive coordination suite, reviewing translation packets. The moment she flipped to the Dutch-Chinese partnership summary, her brow furrowed. The tone was off. The Mandarin was grammatically correct but culturally tone-deaf. Phrases intended to convey partnership and humility came across as patronizing. And the Dutch sections, though technically accurate, were stiff, formal to the point of awkwardness. She grabbed her laptop and cross-checked several segments with reference texts from her linguistics archive. Then she opened the hotel's internal translation chat channel and began searching. 30 minutes later, she found it, a brief thread between two junior staffers, buried in the backlog. One asked, "Who's handling Mandarin for the trade summit?" That sentence about economic superiority sounds. In wrong. The reply was a shrug emoji. Then Ashley Wilson's company, Don't question it. Nepotism on parade. Eliza took a screenshot. She dove deeper into the shared folder logs, following access timestamps. Every file had been uploaded under an external vendor account, Wilson Language Services. The signature on the contract was Ashley Wilson. Eliza cross-referenced the LinkedIn profile. No listed certifications, no language degrees, just a vague line, multilingual consultant. No degrees listed, no certifications. Eliza searched further and found an outdated portfolio PDF uploaded to a freelance site. Its only credential, a single week-long seminar in basic cultural literacy. Unaccredited and 3 years old. Eliza's heart pounded. These weren't just mistakes. They were time bombs. One phrase in Mandarin equated a proposed collaboration with strategic subordination, a term that, in Chinese diplomatic context, implied surrender rather than partnership. It was a blunder capable of derailing the entire negotiation. Misinterpretations in diplomatic phrasing could sabotage entire agreements. She printed the most problematic excerpts and annotated them. Then she compiled an internal memo outlining the cultural and semantic errors in both Mandarin and Dutch. Her fingers didn't tremble, not now. The magnitude of the errors settled in fully. This wasn't a typo or awkward phrasing. Another phrase in Dutch directly translated to unequal alliance, a phrase with colonial undertones, guaranteed to raise diplomatic red flags among European delegates. Grant needed to see this. As she gathered her documents, another message appeared in the translation thread. We flagged errors last month. Got told to stay in our lane. In Mechanisarchinwana, Tuni. Another screenshot. Eliza copied everything to a secured flash drive, tucked it into the inner pocket of her blazer. Before leaving the room, she turned back to the table, took one long look at the files, and shut the folder. It wasn't just incompetence, it was systemic, and it had a name. The boardroom on the 34th floor had never hosted a meeting quite like this. Executives filled every chair. Their murmurs hushed as Alexander Grant entered with Eliza walking beside him. Behind them, a screen flickered to life. On the front row sat guests from China, the Netherlands, France, representatives of the very alliances the Aurora Grand sought to impress. Thank you all for coming, Grant began, voice firm. What you're about to see may be uncomfortable, but necessary. A click. The screen displayed excerpts from the Mandarin and Dutch translations, phrases highlighted in red, side by side with corrected versions. Then screenshots of internal chats. One message read, "We've flagged the translation issues 3 times. HR said not to question vendor contracts." Another said bluntly, "She's Wilson's niece. It's not about quality. Staff flagging mistakes." The ignored warnings. The contractor's credentials or lack thereof. The vendor responsible for these errors is Wilson Language Services, Grant said. A firm owned by Ashley Wilson, niece of our department head, Mrs. Sarah Wilson. Gasps rippled through the room. The HR director shifted uneasily. Sarah Wilson sat frozen. Grant continued. These documents were reviewed by Minnash, Eliza Carter. Her background in linguistics, her fluency in Dutch, Mandarin, and French, her qualifications were ignored for 6 years. He paused. Until yesterday, when I heard her speak. A man in the Dutch delegation stood up slowly. He was gray-haired, distinguished. "Excuse me," he said, his accent crisp. "Eliza Carter, did you publish a paper in the Journal of Applied Linguistics 5 years ago on syntactic variation in intercultural negotiation?" Eliza blinked. "Yes, sir, Yabranathan. That was my thesis. I've cited it," he said simply. "Twice?" Silence fell. Then, quietly, a few of the executives began clapping. Others joined. Orkinavranapitaran Ifhinapinin. Not thunderous applause, but steady, respectful. Grant let it settle before speaking again. "From this point forward, all language services will be internally audited. Contracts will be reviewed. Promotions and hiring practices will be investigated for bias. And the leadership responsible for this negligence will be held accountable." He turned slightly. "May Wilson, you are suspended pending further review. HR will escort you." Sarah didn't move. 2 security officers stepped forward. The screen shifted again, now showing a comparison chart, internal applicants versus external hires by race and gender. A murmur spread. One executive visibly recoiled, whispering, "My God, how did we miss this?" A French delegate leaned toward his colleague and said in a low voice, "If this data is real, your house has more than cracks, it has rot." He sat back, stunned. The disparities were staggering. This wasn't just one mistake, Grant said. It was a system built to silence talent. Eliza stood quietly beside him, hands clasped. She hadn't asked for this stage. But now that she stood on it, she wouldn't step down. I was only trying to protect the company's image, Sarah said finally, voice thin. Eliza turned her head, her voice steady. You didn't protect the company? You buried its talent. Wilson opened her mouth again, but Grant raised a hand. Security, he said quietly. As the officers escorted her out, some executives watched silently. Others turned away. Eliza watched her go not with triumph, but with clarity. She had spent 6 years scrubbing floors no one looked at. Now the whole room was watching, and she was not afraid. The following morning, a formal memo circulated across the Aurora Grant Executive Network. Sarah Wilson terminated effective immediately. Thomas Whitmore, Director of Human Resources, suspended pending a full external investigation. The document was signed by Alexander Grant himself. Eliza saw it while sipping weak coffee in the staff break room. Her hand froze midair, cup hovering. For a moment, she stared, unsure if she had misread the names. But there they were, bold, undeniable. No fanfare, no announcement, just an internal notification, like so many others she'd seen ignored before. But not this time. Her inbox pinged. A new email, subject line apology and recognition. Dear Miss Carter, it began. On behalf of the Aurora Grand Board of Directors, we offer a formal apology for the systemic barriers that delayed your recognition. We acknowledge your qualifications, your perseverance, and the dignity with which you have conducted yourself. She read it twice. Then again, no one around her knew what had just changed. Eliza exhaled slowly, pressing her lips together, the corners twitching not quite into a smile, but close. Her fingers traced the edge of the email, grounding herself in the moment. But for the first time in 6 years, Eliza Carter felt seen in print, in action, in truth. Later that day, Alexander stood in the center of the same boardroom where just hours ago everything had cracked open. This is not about a few bad decisions, he said, addressing senior staff. It's about a structure that allowed them. That ends now. The room was tense. No one interrupted. He outlined immediate reforms, all hiring practices to be reviewed by a third-party auditor. A new internal tracking system for promotion requests. Mandatory bias training for department leads. We can't undo the years we failed to see our own people, he said. But we can make sure it never happens again. There were no applause lines. No stage congratulations. Just quiet nods and the beginning of change. In the HR office, a young administrative assistant approached Eliza with a small envelope. This just came for you. Inside was a printed letter, a copy of the board resolution, and at the bottom, in pen, a handwritten note. We should have seen you sooner. We will not make that mistake again. Eliza folded the letter carefully and tucked it into her planner. She didn't need the spotlight, just the truth. And now, finally, it was in writing. The plaque on the new office door read Eliza M. Carter, Director of Multilingual Internal Communications. It was a modest title plate. No fanfare, no marble trim, but every letter meant something earned. From her 32nd floor window, Eliza could see across the rooftops of the city buildings that had once felt as distant as constellations. In just 4 weeks, the pilot initiative she'd proposed, the Invisible Talent Program, had already identified over 24 staff with overlooked qualifications, a night janitor with a degree in information systems, a bellhop fluent in 4 languages, a single mother in laundry services working on a business certification. The hotel had changed, slowly, but tangibly. Each morning now began with case reviews, resumes being revisited, talents being reconsidered. Eliza often paused over the names she'd once seen: cleaning rooms, hauling linens, taking orders at the cafe. Now those same names sat atop new roles, new chances. And with each promotion, her resolve grew stronger. Her desk was filled with stacks of employee proposals. One caught her eye, a handwritten business plan for a cost-saving beverage strategy submitted anonymously. She flipped the pages, impressed by the detail. The math was precise. The projection model strong. She walked downstairs that afternoon, found the sender Luis, a young barista from Oaxaca who'd been with the hotel 4 years. You wrote this, she asked. Luis straightened, unsure if he was in trouble. Yes, ma'am. You ever studied finance formally? No, just watched videos, read books. I like numbers. She smiled. How do you feel about a role in beverage cost optimization? He blinked. Wait me. UI. That evening, she updated the program dashboard. New status 1, internal promotion activated. One story changed. Outside her office, the hallway buzzed as people moved through evening shifts. But inside, a quiet hum of something new had settled an atmosphere of belief. Belief that ability would no longer be buried beneath uniforms or accents. That someone was watching. That it finally mattered. The ballroom looked different now. Not because of the chandeliers or the polished marble floors, but because of who stood on the stage. Eliza Carter adjusted the microphone. Her fingers were steady, but her gaze softened as she scanned the crowd. The room was full executives, newly promoted staff, international guests, but in their eyes, she now saw attention, not dismissal. Recognition, not pity. But her eyes rested on a small figure seated in the front row, a girl of about 17, nervously clutching a certificate folder. Eliza spoke without notes. When I was young, my mother cleaned hotel rooms much like these. She had a degree, too. No one ever asked about it. She used to tell me, "You may be overlooked, but your value never disappears." And Maynard, a pause, a breath. She didn't live to see this day, but I carry her words into every decision I make. The screen behind her displayed the new scholarship recipients. At the top of the list, Camilla Reyes, daughter of Rosa Reyes, retired housekeeping staff. Applause. Camilla looked down, overcome. Rosa, seated beside her, wept silently. Eliza continued, "We called this initiative the Invisible Talent Program. But the truth is, no one is invisible when you're seen through the lens of fairness." More applause. Later that evening, Eliza stood alone near the edge of the terrace, city lights glittering beneath her. She took out her phone, tapped open a photo of her mother, standing in a pressed housekeeping uniform, smiling. She whispered, "We made it." Behind her, the ballroom doors opened. Staff members began pouring out, some still in uniforms, some now in suits. Someone tapped her shoulder. "Mezzano, Carter." It was Camilla, eyes wide. I just wanted to say thank you. No one's ever looked at my future before." Eliza placed a hand on her shoulder. "Now you look forward, and never let anyone convince you you're less." As the crowd gathered behind them, Eliza turned back toward the skyline. She didn't need to raise her voice. The applause that followed Camilla's words, the quiet respect from staff in suits and uniforms alike, those were louder than anything she could have said. She had already changed the room. If this story touched your heart, take a moment. Let it linger. Think about the people you've met, the ones who work silently, who shine in corners no spotlight reaches. Ask yourself, how many Elizas have you passed by without seeing? At Unveiled Wealth, every view, every message, and every shared experience helps us build a community rooted in truth, justice, and inspiration. Our mission is simple: to uncover the extraordinary within the ordinary, to give voice to the overlooked, and to transform silence into strength. Through stories like Eliza's, we hope to remind the world that dignity doesn't require a title, and greatness often wears the quietest shoes. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss a story that matters. And if you know someone whose light has gone unseen for too long, tag them, because your one share might just open a door they've been knocking on for years. Thank you for watching. We're honored to walk beside you. See you in the next story, only on Unveiled Wealth.